There are exactly 4 reasons off the top of my head why it is so difficult for people to manifest $1 million. I'm going to share those with you right now because I think they're important. And literally, not 1 week goes by that I don't have a sales call or talk to somebody who's like, I want to manifest $1 million. And I'm like, are you doing the mindset to manifest $1 million? So I'm going to go through the 4 things, but there's probably 5. Actually, there's very much many more, many more, but not every single one of those are going to apply. And these are the most common. So when you actually want to manifest $1 million, the number one first thing that you should be doing is the mindset around that. That's what most people are not doing, right? Doing the mindset around this is going to show you all of the spaces that your money mindset is out of misalignment. So it's absolutely impossible to manifest money at a level beyond anything you have ever before held in your hands or received or created or had access to possession of, right? So let's say the most money you ever made in a year was 100,000 or 300,000. It's going to be more difficult for you to get to $1 million without doing the money mindset work. It is the mindset work that makes even making $1 million possible. And that's where people don't actually understand. They kind of miss that one, right? So number one, you have got to be doing the mindset work, and the work around the mindset is money mindset. And there's so many levels to this. I've done it. Yes, I created 7 figures. No, I don't consider myself a millionaire because it doesn't end up being 7 figures in the bank. And it was a part of my business that I had built and I walked away from that I didn't really love. So yes, I am qualified to talk about this. I do know about it and I do understand it. So here's what I want to say. If you're doing the work, you have to be doing the money mindset work, and you have to constantly be upping the level, the ceiling that you are comfortable receiving and having access to and responsibility for. People don't understand that money is a lot of responsibility, and we know that we're very irresponsible in many areas of our life. Even to this day, I have many areas of my life I am irresponsible in. So being responsible for great amounts of money, also our smart brains, the part of us that actually understands things and comprehends things, knows that there's a level of responsibility that goes with this. And that's something we can't get around. Now, whether we're ready to handle that or move into that or even work with it, that's an entirely different story. But there is definitely a level of responsibility. And you have a set point for like the most amount of money you are comfortable having responsibility for. And you also have a floor. So you have a ceiling and a floor. And your floor is like, a lot of people refer to this as your lowest standard, like your minimum monthly income or your minimum yearly income. So if you have a job and you make 60,000 a year, you're probably not going to make less than 60,000. You're not going to tolerate making less than 60,000 at any point in your life when that is already your minimum and what you are used to having as your minimum. Right? Now you could make more because people get raises and do things and have side hustles, but that's how that works. So money mindset is number one. You have got to be doing it. The second one is there is a feeling with being a millionaire. Now, here's what people don't tell you about manifesting great amounts of money. People don't tell you that it's the achievement of hitting that milestone that is the real deal, not the money necessarily. So when I was getting up to making my 7 figures, I had a lot of really big, like blow my mind cash moments, right? Like I had a 200K day. I had a 146K week. I had my first 50K month. And then from that I would have like 20K days on the regular. So there was feelings that happened with each one of these. And in the beginning, it was exciting about the money, but then it got to be normalized, right? So the money just got to be normalized. It was normal for me to accept 20K. It was normal for me to sell a 50K package. It was normal. Well, I don't know if it was ever normal for me to have a 200K day, but I was certainly open to that. I like that idea. I like that day. That day will forever live like as the biggest, like, what, right? But there was a feeling associated with all those, and the feeling was the achievement, right? Like the 200K day, the money blew my mind. But what really blew my mind was that I had the power to do that. I had the power to make that happen. I achieved that. It wasn't the money. The money was great. But by this point, I had already been making so much money, and I'd been having, like, I'd already had a 75K cash month that I made in 2 weeks working 1 hour a day. And it wasn't the money. Like, I remember I was on a coaching call, and I was on a group coaching call with my mastermind. And I was literally watching payments come in for like 300, 500, 5,000, 2,000, 5,000, 2,000, 300. And it was all over the board because I was selling a handful of different things at the time. And it was the achievement. I was like, wow, I can sell multiple things at once, even though everyone says I can only sell one thing. I can do this, right? It was the achievement of I created this. It was the achievement of I put this into action. I put this into motion. This came from me. This didn't come from anyone outside of me. All of this came from me. I created this. I showed up. I sold. I presented. I promoted. I connected. I'm helping. I'm serving. It was all of that, right? So it's the feeling of all of that. And then it's the feeling of like, wow, I did it. A lot of people get that confused with like, oh my God, it's the money, it's the money, it's the money, it's the money. Like, yeah, the first couple times the money is exciting. Not gonna lie. Like, money is always exciting. And big gobs, bucket loads of money are always exciting. That doesn't become less exciting, but it does become expected. Which brings me to number 3. So number 2 is that it's a feeling. And number 3 is that it has to be normalized. Big amounts of money have to be normalized. So the most fascinating thing I ever sat through was a conversation where it was like, it's only $1 million, just do that. Why are you even waiting? Like, I sat there in the room and people were having this conversation and they were like, yeah, like I just spent 10 million last week on something that was like not even that great. And like, you get to do this for $1 million. Like, I don't want to say the details because these were personal and it was like, but I was in this room and people were normalizing large amounts of money. And that's when I got it in my head. That's like when things really clicked and I was like, wait a second. Like, I normalized $20. These people are normalizing $1 million like it's $20. So just like you may have normalized 5, 10, 15, but 5, 10, 20, or 50, or even $100 in your life. Like, think of an amount of money that you've normalized that is just so normal for you to receive, or so normal for you to spend, or so normal for you to deal with, right? Like, we all have that set point or that amount that like we'll spend something without even thinking about it. Like $100, yeah, sure, spend it, right? Think about that. And then normalize that by adding a 0 to it. And then another 0 to it. And then another 0 to it until you get to a space that it's really blowing your mind, right? Like, I will never forget spending $50,000 on coaching. It was not normalized to me before that. Not normalized, but because I stepped into a new, and I'm going to get to the next one, but because I stepped into a new identity, I normalized it. And you'll notice that all of these are like entangled. They all loop together, right? So I normalized what previously had only been a small amount, right? I'll never forget the time when my husband said to me, we were talking about money, we're moving money. We had like 8 or 10 accounts at the time. And it was the first time I had 100,000 like sitting cash in one account, just doing nothing. And I still had my other bank accounts with money in them, several tens of thousands of dollars. And I'll never forget, my husband and I were driving and I was like, well, stop. I got to stop at the ATM and get some money. We don't have any money and blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, I just okayed like a payment. And he said something about it was only for 8. And then he laughed and I'm like, what are you laughing about? And he goes, I just realized that I'm having this moment where like 8,000 is the new norm. And I was like, yeah, 8,000 is the real new norm. Like, okay, so you spent 8,000 on it. Like, you okayed the payment for it, right? Like, whatever it was. I don't remember what the deal was. But I remember seeing it, and that became his new normal. Was like, it was normal to move around 8,000. It was normal to spend 8,000. It was normal to approve payments for 8,000. My husband is actually the CFO of my business, so he works with my accounting team, just so you understand how that works and why we're even having this conversation, because I don't have the bandwidth or capacity to deal with every piece of my business. So many parts of it are compartmentalized, as it should be. But anyway, and we have an entire accounting team. So we were talking about this, and it came up because I was stopping at the ATM. And so that is a level of normalization. Normalization happens when you're no longer in awe of it, and it becomes quite normal. Just like it becomes quite normal to give your kid $5 or $10 or $20 or $50 or $100, right? Like in this case, we'd be hitting a whole new level if we just handed our daughter $8,000 and we were like, yeah, that's fine. Just, whatever. Like, that is how you know there's normalization. You can't get to $1 million if you're not normalizing bigger numbers and comfort to those numbers. And this is going to go back to money mindset, right? And so for you to normalize things, you have to normalize spending things, receiving things, feeling things, dealing with bigger numbers, finding your level of comfort, doing the mindset work, but then also normalizing even bigger numbers. Like, you have to be able to normalize, someone paying you $100,000. That is a very polarizing thing to talk about in the online space, either in coaching or business. Like, people are very against it, or I would never charge this, I could never pay this, blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe not, but what if somebody guaranteed that you would make $1 million by paying them $100,000? That's pretty common. 10% of like what the expected earnings are is very common. So I want you to normalize through the energy, right? Like, this is why people don't get to $1 million. They think $1 million is so big. When you start to think of $1 million as so small, so like every day, so average. Like, the person was like, yeah, I just spent 10,000 last week. I mean, 10 million last week, right? I was like, excuse me? Like, how am I even in this room? How am I even in this room? But that was it. Like, to somebody who's worth 100 million or $1 billion, they're like, what are you even thinking about? It's $1 million. Just drop it. Just drop it. Like, you're wasting more time on something that like you'll earn back in the next 45 minutes, right? Like, I don't know, but I mean, at that level, right? So that's one of the most critical things that I don't see people do. They're like, they have their heart set on $1 million, and it's like this big, outrageous, outlandish thing. You should be normalized and in a cash flow. It's such a rate that like, this is comfortable and this is normal to you and your body and your nervous system and your thoughts and your mindset, that it's just second nature. And that brings us to identity. Because you absolutely, number 4 is identity. You absolutely have to hold the identity of someone who makes $1 million, of someone who has $1 million, of someone who is responsible for $1 million, of someone who holds $1 million, of someone who can receive $1 million. There's an entire identity that goes with being able to do the work. Yes, there is some work. There is work. I worked a lot to make that money. There is an incredible amount of work. So it's an identity, right? And because we've already talked about normalizing it, and we've talked about the feeling, and we've talked about the mindset, all of these pieces contribute to your identity. And your identity is going to determine whether or not you can be a millionaire, because you are going to be a millionaire in your mind before you ever see it in reality. You're going to be a millionaire in your identity before you ever get it in your life. You're going to be a millionaire in your feeling before you ever get to spend the money. Which brings me to my bonus number 5, is consciousness. Your consciousness has to be in alignment to being a millionaire. It has to be in alignment to all of the things that I've mentioned before this, all 1 through 4. And I told you they were all interlinked and they all go together, right? But your consciousness has to be in alignment. That means your subconscious cannot be blocking you. It can't be putting you in a spin cycle. It can't be running 95% of the show, because people who make $1 million are typically not fully unconscious and going through life like they're half awake or half asleep. You are in a conscious state because you have consciously done the work. You've been doing the mindset work. You've been doing the feeling work. You've been doing the identity work. You've been doing the normalizing work. All of the work that goes in to manifesting $1 million starts with those things. So you've been doing that work, which puts you in a very conscious state, which puts you in a very aware state, which means that you are more in your present moment in your day-to-day life than you are operating from autopilot. And here's the difference in what your life looks like if you're operating from autopilot. If you're operating from autopilot, your life looks an awful lot like Groundhog Day. And it looks a lot like the day before, and the day before that, and the day before that, and the day before that. Now, sure, you have something different for dinner, and there might have been a holiday, or you might have gone on a date night with your husband. But a fact of the matter is that if all of your days look pretty similar and time is really speeding up for you, there's nothing new under the sun in your life. You are literally living the same day over on a different calendar day and with a different outfit. But when you are conscious, time slows down. Not every single day looks the same. Not every single day feels the same. Some of the activities may be the same, but I guarantee you there are spaces where it's different interactions, different occurrences, different emotions. You are working through different things. You are up leveling. Your energy is changing. Your emotions are changing. Your feeling is changing. Your identity is changing. All of these things are changing. All of them. And all of these things are contributing to whether or not you were going to manifest that $1 million. That's the good news and the bad news. So, let me know where your aha for was. Let me know where your aha for this was, and let me know if you're going to work on these things, because this is the work. This is where it starts. Thank you for listening to me. I'm Sherry Hemstreet of thesherryhemstreet.com. Feel free to let me know how this went for you. Reach out to me. Let's connect. And thank you.